2 days ago on r/Google Earth Finds, a thread known as Disturbing Message spotted on Google Earth near Cesar Chavez Avenue in Los Angeles. Help! Trafico, LAPD, and federal written debris. And of course, it led to a coordinate of 34 degrees north, 118 degrees west. And if you're looking closely, it led to a pretty haunting set of messages. The words help written all across this one yard in a pretty popular, high traffic area, I would say, of Los Angeles, California. So of course the internet did what the internet did, and of course this was a pretty alarming set of things. Not only was the word help written around over here, but words like Trafico, the LAPD, federal, and of course, in amongst far other words put into it, terrorismo, dos. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, all of this spread across the entire internet like wildfire in conspiracy theory circles. It became a pretty big topic on 4chan, became a pretty big topic all over X, and plenty of other social media circles. Now, is this indicative of a human trafficking operation, ladies and gentlemen? Well, let's sit back and try to figure out what's actually going on while we dig through this rabbit hole. Now, in the city of Los Angeles, around Cesar Chavez and, of course, Mission Road, it seems, appear to be this lot. Now, obviously, if you're recognizing where this section is, closer inspection will take you, ladies and gentlemen, to a pretty iconic street in Los Angeles. Chances are, if you played games like Grand Theft Auto 5, you recognize this bridge. You probably recognize this area. But of course, looking further into it, the more we actually see what's going on, the words help are written pretty obviously as anybody drives by. That same Google Earth image ends up looking like this from the ground. So you see the actual words HELP. And of course, even on things like the sidewalk, you can see the word help written over here. There were other people who dug into like Apple Maps, for instance, and found that around this billboard that you're looking at, just behind it was also the words written help, or at least in the front of it at one point. Actually, behind this wall, you could actually see graffiti that indicated the words run. So of course, all of these coincidences got people a little bit suspicious. Now, of course, ladies and gentlemen, thankfully, satellite imagery has the ability for us to actually look at historical data and see just what happened to other parts of this area. So, of course, more internet sleuths went down and found out that somewhere around February 2023, when the Google Earth car drove by, this billboard, ladies and gentlemen, had words like help, FBI, ASAP, urgent, and of course, even closer, names like Alyssa would show up. Now, when I say this is like high traffic, I really mean high traffic. I myself have driven around this area. I actually have probably eaten near here too. There might even be like a burger place that I ate around this location. And oh my God, I actually freaked out for a second. I thought my wife's car was actually right there. But of course, ladies and gentlemen, to give you an idea, this billboard is one that I myself have probably driven past, especially if this was captured in February of 2023. But generally, I'm not really paying attention to most of the billboards in the city because there's a whole lot of billboards all over Los Angeles. But this is relatively alarming. Now, obviously, this area became a pretty, again, viral location, and even, again, people from the FaZe clan had actually ended up showing up to this viral location, trying to figure out what was actually going on. This clip is from an individual known as FaZe Lacey, and he comes across something that's a little spookier than, it should be. Listen to this.
The more we stay here, the more we...
Is there any chance you'd like to do an interview for our documentary?
Uh-oh.
You say come here? Yo. I ain't gonna lie, you got that, gang.
Get out.
Say get out. Say to get out.
So the guy in the car tells Lacey to get out as his two friends have already pussied out of this situation away from him. So again, when somebody in this area tells you to probably back away, you probably should. To give you an idea, this part of the city is not one that I personally would like to drive through. I only go through it if I have to. I would never stop my car here. Never ever would I stop here to look around, shop, or even eat. This is a relatively spookier side of Los Angeles, okay? Generally speaking, there's a lot of interesting looking businesses. a lot of what I suspect to be possibly gang-related behavior. I mean, there's literally my experience driving around this area. I think I've actually seen at least 2 chop shops, and I would not trust this location at all. And of course, there were a lot of investigators on places like Reddit where, again, this user goes, "That's sketch AF. I'm like a 20-minute walk from there. I already called the LAPD, and I'm on my way with water and food. Don't let them try to tell you I had any weapons on TV if any shit goes down." Again, I want to preface this by saying that usually when it comes to viral stories like this, I read this all the time, and I swear to God, just leave it at calling the law enforcement agencies and do not go down here. Again, there are actual gang-related activities that occur all over Los Angeles, especially in this side of Los Angeles, East LA. And I would not recommend you go down here, especially with a gun. You're only going to aggravate the situation. And it's great that you want to try to feed people and come with water, especially if there are a lot of homeless people, which there are in that region. I would not ever go in here without, again, just leave it to the police, all right? You're actually...
Whoa, what? So someone spotted a legit cry for help on Google Earth near Cesar Chavez Avenue in LA? That's insane. Like, imagine casually scrolling through Google Earth and just stumbling upon words like help and Trafico plastered all over the place. That's not normal at all. And then there's the whole conspiracy vibe. People online are going, this has to be something big, human trafficking, maybe something worse. And let's be real, when you hear LAPD, FBI, terrorism, and all that, your mind automatically starts piecing together a crime drama. It's like something straight out of a movie. But hold on, the creepy part? People actually went to this spot in real life. Like, okay, props to the bravery, but also, what are you doing pulling up to a potentially dangerous location? One guy in a car even told someone to get out. Like, bro, what's happening there? If someone yells that at me, I'm already gone. No questions asked. And then you've got Redditors who are like, I'll go there myself with water and food. What are you thinking? This is not a video game. This is East LA, where, as they said, there's gang activity and chop shops. I'm not stepping foot there unless I have to. Also the graffiti though. Words like help, run, and even names. That's way too specific to be random, right? And if you add historical Google Earth imagery, seeing help FBI urgent earlier, that's sending chills down my spine. Who wrote that and what happened to them? This is the kind of thing that would keep me up at night just thinking about it. But here's the thing, as sketchy as this is, people pulling up to investigate feels like they're asking for trouble. Like, I get wanting to help, but this isn't Scooby-Doo. Call the cops and let them deal with it. If this really is something criminal or gang related, you're putting yourself at risk. Honestly, the whole situation feels like a mix of modern internet detective work and real life danger. It's fascinating, but also terrifying to think about. I'd love to see what the cops found, if anything, but I'm definitely not getting involved in person. What about you? Would you ever go check out something like this?
Stepping into some dangerous situations that really don't have anything to do with human trafficking, actually has more to do with gang-related activities. So looking closer into this, I dug even deeper and found that this question was actually asked in r/Ask Los Angeles about a year ago. What's going on with the Help Me signs where the 101 and 10 split going east after downtown? So this user mentions the landscaping is constantly being changed to say help on the Boyle Heights hillside. The messages mention corruption and police issues. What's actually going on over there? So the more you go down, there's actually some users that have shown some actual photographs being taken. And there's, again, straight up graffiti of, just people posting up things like help. In fact, if you look closer down here, you can probably read things like the FBI. For instance, la son motos y voces, secuestros, robos, I think it's like extortion right over here. So again, it's just words like help and just graffiti being thrown around in here. Now at this moment in time, I also decided to see if there were any webcams or potential traffic cams that were capturing, actual footage in this area. And unfortunately, according to this, the closest webcam that I was able to find was a traffic camera around Elysian Park, Bunker Hill. So again, this is what a traffic camera would look like. I was trying to find something near that actual area just to see if maybe you could capture a glimpse of who actually did this, and unfortunately that information wasn't available. So in the conspiracy hole, people started to look even further into some of these images and found that there were some suspicious looking holes. Again, this area is known to have some construction around it, so it's not uncommon to see something like that in an area like this, especially when there is construction. And how do you know that there's construction? Well, going into Google Earth, one of the things that we can do is actually see a timeline going, yes, literally all the way back to 1985. So coincidentally, this area was a massive blur for Google satellite imagery because there's just not enough information to go here. And of course, in 1994, this is what the lot actually used to look like. Of course, in 2004, you could see that this was a actual car lot, and possibly even related to this business right over here. In 2006, it was still a car lot. 2011, then you would start to get more high, production imagery through the satellite. 2014, same old deal. Fast forward all the way to 2018, and it's pretty much an empty area. But of course, going to the year 2020, you can see it's still pretty empty. 2023, you can see that things start to fill up, and it's around 2023 that the word help actually starts showing up. And of course, the more and more you go down, the more and more actual construction work, it appears, is actually happening in this area. Now, the only other interesting thing to note is in around September of 2022, you can actually see a whole bunch of containers showing up here until, again, 2023, around the summer, when, of course, the word help gets shown. But of course, one thing that you also start to notice over here is around this little, like, cul-de-sac, not cul-de-sac, but this little enclosure, this little parking space almost here, you can start to see that a home...
Alright, this is where things get super interesting and a little murky. So it turns out those help signs aren't screaming about human trafficking, but are more tied to gang activity and maybe even some local issues involving corruption and police. That's a whole different rabbit hole to go down, but still sketchy as hell. Now, the fact that someone posted about this a year ago on r/AskLosAngeles means this has been happening for a while, and it's wild that the landscaping keeps getting updated. Like, who's out there replanting and rewriting these messages? Is this some kind of guerrilla protest against the authorities? That mention of police corruption makes you think someone's definitely trying to send a message loud and clear. Also, let's talk about the graffiti FBI, extortion, kidnapping, HELP. This isn't your standard tagging where people are just marking their turf. These words feel targeted, like someone's yelling into the void hoping someone, anyone, listens. But then again, could it just be someone messing with people for attention? I mean, Boyle Heights already has a history of gang presence, so maybe it's a mix of truth and exaggeration, and the homeless encampments forming around there, that adds another layer. It could explain why this stuff keeps popping up. People in vulnerable situations trying to communicate or even deter outsiders. But it's so cryptic it just fuels conspiracy theories. The deep dive into Google Earth's timeline is crazy too. Seeing how this area evolved over decades and when these help signs started showing up makes me think this isn't random, especially with construction in the area. Was someone trying to catch attention before the place gets completely redeveloped? And those suspicious looking holes? Could they mean anything beyond regular construction? Hard to say, but it's definitely sketchy. The way you laid it out with construction changes, container arrivals, and the homeless population makes this feel like the perfect storm of neglect, tension, and desperation. What's trippy is how this hits so many angles. Potential protests, gang activity, and urban struggles all mashed together. Here's my take. This could very well be someone calling out injustice in their own chaotic way. Or it's someone trolling, preying on how quick people are to jump to worst case scenarios. Either way, the situation screams look closer, because even if it's not a crime ring, it's pointing to a deeper societal issue. What's your gut feeling? Is this some symbolic protest, or could there be something darker lurking behind the signs?
Homeless encampment starts to actually form. In fact, in the most recent photography over here in 2024, the February of it, you can see it's pretty much taken over by a group of homeless individuals. Which, again, this area, if you're looking very closely, is not too far away from even places like Skid Row or, again, the very high homeless density areas of Los Angeles. If you've ever driven around here, there is, again, a lot of homeless encampments in this section of Los Angeles, okay? In fact, it's very close to DTLA. Now, why did I bring up the homeless encampment over here? Again, there are two conspiracy theories that kind of come into this situation. One of them is, obviously, this place could potentially be an area of human, trafficking. Those holes that we mentioned earlier could potentially be an entry point for people that are unfortunately being trafficked. And again, the thing that obviously kind of buzzes anybody is this is again, pretty high traffic area. This wouldn't have been avoided by any form of aerial patrol, whether it be, the LAPD or a civilian. The actual reality of it is, too, is that this help was also pretty visible from the ground, as we've seen earlier in the video. And the thing about it is, if this is a human trafficking operation, again, you have to ask yourself the question, why would a, victim come up to the top, basically be allowed to write out these very, very legible forms of help that would easily be seen by any form of aerial traffic surveillance, which happens quite a fair bit in Los Angeles? Why would the criminal allow the victim to necessarily do this? Either this is a human trafficking situation, or the more likely scenario is it's unfortunately somebody who may be very mentally ill, which obviously is something that is very common with the homeless population in California. It's one of the reasons why I went to that homeless encampment over here. This is, to me at least, it seems like a potential sign of a homeless individual or several homeless people possibly having, again, an episode, or again, this is mental illness leading them to do this. But again, there's obviously things that people are questioning, right? The mentioning of the FBI, the LAPD, the police. In fact, in other Reddit communities, people have talked and said that they have actually seen a homeless person write these things out. Now, obviously, I can't confirm that, but again, it would probably lead credence to the second theory versus the more sensationalistic human trafficking theory. Now, when it came to on-the-ground journalism, one user known as the LA Guy actually did end up finding some people around this area. And one resident of this area actually had to explain that this potentially was an actual homeless person, according to them.
Okay, I was just wondering. Because, somebody on the ground wrote a bunch of help.
Help?
Yeah,
I know.
What is that?
I don't know, man. Every time that it's the big ones, the small ones. I don't know what is that.
Is it people just messing around?
It's a homeless.
You think so?
Yeah.
For instance, Illustrious Youth here says, I live in Los Angeles and drive by daily. There is a homeless man living under the pass that does this. On the freeway, you can read all of the theories. A lot of it looks like rants and ramblings. He's been arrested and moved out of there so many times, but always comes back and redoes all the markings if they paint it. And of course, another user also confirmed, I live here and can confirm that he does this every day. Now again, this is the word of, individuals that claim to be living in Los Angeles. I can't confirm if they've done it, but it lines up with the mental illness theory if true. And I've unfortunately seen a fair bit of homeless people in Los Angeles, and I've unfortunately seen actual mental illness episodes amongst the actual homeless crowd. It's a shame to see. You really wish something can be done, but unfortunately, with a cocktail of drugs and again, a city that unfortunately houses a lot of homeless individuals, it is just a shame to see. Now, going back to the old 4chaners over here, they decided to dig even deeper than some of the Redditors, and in one instance, they actually dug through a mapping application known as Spartan Forge. And this is where, again, more of these mentions show up. So, for instance, FBI Wanted shows up as debris, Moneymakers, Police Metro, Hild Garcia, LA China, Kevin De Leon, Agatisha Fiera, Jose Cesares Limon, Adriana Solis, and again, this is just...
Okay, this one dives even deeper into a mix of fact, speculation, and just straight up chaos, and I have a lot of thoughts about it. First, the help signs potentially being tied to a homeless individual or someone with mental illness makes the most sense when you strip away all the conspiracies. The descriptions of random rants, constant reappearance despite arrests, and the fact that multiple locals have seen someone actively writing these things. It all aligns with someone who's mentally unwell, and honestly, that's heartbreaking. It highlights a huge societal failure, a broken system that leaves vulnerable individuals out there dealing with untreated mental illness in public spaces. Now, for the human trafficking theory, I think it's the least likely scenario. You're telling me traffickers would let their victims leave giant SOS messages on the side of a freeway? That's way too high risk for any operation like that. And considering how much surveillance happens in LA, whether it's traffic cameras, police patrols, or even curious people on the ground, this would have been uncovered a long time ago if it were legit. Plus, the holes in the ground being some kind of trafficking entry point. That feels like a massive stretch. It's much more plausible that it's just construction debris or remnants of some old project. Then there's the graffiti mentioning the FBI, police, extortion, random names, and accusations. If this was just about someone crying out for help, the messages wouldn't be so scattershot. These ramblings look exactly like what you'd expect from someone dealing with paranoia or schizophrenia. schizophrenia, common in people experiencing homelessness. It's not uncommon for them to fixate on institutions like the FBI or police, blaming them for their struggles or accusing them of conspiracies. It's tragic, but it also explains the weirdness without needing a grand conspiracy. What really grabbed me is the Spartan Forge mapping app stuff. The names listed there, along with terms like FBI, wanted, and debris, seem like digital breadcrumbs left by people trying to make sense of chaotic graffiti. It's like the internet crowdsourcing a narrative around random scraps of information, but this is where things go sideways, because it's easy to start connecting unrelated dots and create a story that sounds more sinister than it actually is. Finally, the locals chiming in with their observations makes this feel more grounded, several people confirming the same story. A homeless man repeatedly coming back to this spot and writing the messages paints a much clearer picture than the theories about trafficking or secret operations. It's messy, it's sad, and it's very real. Here's my reaction overall. This entire situation is equal parts tragedy and curiosity. It's a reminder of how easy it is to let conspiracy theories overshadow the actual problem: homelessness, untreated mental illness, and a lack of resources for people who desperately need help. It's also fascinating to see how the internet goes wild over things like this. Redditors, 4chan, and random apps all trying to piece together something from fragments that probably don't mean as much as they think. But at its core, this story feels like it's screaming for attention in the worst way. Not because of some crime ring, but because someone out there needs help in ways we can't even begin to imagine. What about you? Are you leaning more toward conspiracy? Or do you think this is just a sad, everyday reality of LA?
More and more debris being thrown in here. And of course, this is from 2024 0830. And yeah, it's just it's more of this like art, more of this like, messages just being strewn about. Now, where again, it got really wilder in this thread with the 4chaners is when they started looking at some of these surrounding businesses. And this is where like I did come across something that genuinely did catch my attention. Not too far away from the actual key area, right over here, if you go just a little bit to the east side, you can start to notice that this is actually part of a massive rail yard, which I believe is the Union Pacific Rail Yard. And one of the actual businesses that I saw was one street lead to this area. So there are some cars, there are some people apparently working on these cars, and of course you can actually see that this location is a apparent police station, like the Union Pacific Police. Now, obviously, if you're looking at this really carefully, I doubt that there's any actual police work that goes on in the situation. I would say that if anything goes here, it might be the exact opposite of police work. So I decided to look up Union Pacific like stuff, and apparently there is actually like a police department with special agents for crimes that are committed against railroads. Now, of course, the department is responsible for all the locations across 32,000 miles in tracts of 23 states. And of course, they have a dispatch center in Omaha, Nebraska. Now, the thing is, I couldn't really find anything about this Los Angeles branch in here. Like, it's just, they've got a whole bunch of stuff going here. I would say, based on February 2019, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of work going here. In fact, this is the latest date that I can actually find. If you go back, you can actually see that literally May 2014 was when like this appeared to actually be open. Like, this was their actual division headquarters. And of course, if you go to 2015, it still appeared to actually be active. And in 2017, it was just ridden with graffiti. Until finally, in 2019, it just literally got entirely blocked off. There may be something happening over here that may not be related to human trafficking, but it certainly isn't related to anything that I would even say is good behavior. There was one other conspiracy theory that kind of popped up with this. One user on X goes, looks like a Cemex spot. Cemex being a multinational company headquartered in Monterrey, Mexico, that I believe has to do with, again, selling building resources. And I believe, according to this situation, it's ultimately owned by one of Mexico's top billionaires. I believe it's Carlos Fuentes, but if not, I can issue a correction as we do as we edit this in post. Send someone into the hole. Let's find them. Yeah, as much conspiratorial as you get, for your own safety, you should leave this to law enforcement professionals, okay? Cemex Los Angeles area, Cemex was deeply involved in the child trafficking rings. Deeply. So again, I don't know how true this necessarily is. The one link that led to this conspiracy is probably, again, from like poll on 4chan, or X Paranormal, wherever, where they kind of talk about one story from child trafficking camps that was apparently found in Tucson, Arizona. So, of course, again, you go down this list. This week, connected to JonBenet Ramsey case in Arizona, land is owned by Cemex. Carlos Slim is the second largest stockholder of the New York Times. Cemex is a partner of the Clinton Global Initiative. Cemex is linked to Haiti. So, yeah, it's a lot of stuff brought into Cemex over here. And the more I looked into Cemex, in their child trafficking situation, I couldn't really find anything but, news organizations talking about YouTube and many social media sites promoting this conspiracy theory that apparently is misinformation. Again, I couldn't find anything in relation to the Homeland Security, to the Federal Bureau that had Cemex linked in any of this. And the Cemex link wasn't out of nowhere. The only reason it was linked is from this actual location, Cemex is nothing but a 4-minute drive. So right over here is one of the plants for Cemex, and this is the actual location of those help messages. Again, it seems like a pretty flimsy connection. And in reality, in all of this, the most I looked into it, I even looked into the property assessments and the records of the area, and I couldn't find out who actually owned this exact, blotch of land. So in reality, at the end of it, the investigation kind of falls flat over here. Now, it hasn't stopped people for, again, looking into this because it's gotten pretty viral on, again, many forms of social media. But the reality of it is, look, at the end of this, ladies and gentlemen, the one thing that I think most likely makes a lot of sense here is we are looking at messages left by the homeless population of Los Angeles. And of course, with mental illness reigning and drugs to just further accelerate that, it really seems like this is somebody who is homeless, probably issuing a cry of attention, maybe a cry of help, a legitimate cry for help, to be honest with you, or they might have had some seriously bad experiences with the Los Angeles Police Department, which wouldn't shock me. And again, this is somebody leaving behind. Again, the scary part of this is the word trafficos. Again, people are somewhat reasonably believing that this could be a human trafficking situation. But I honestly, after investigating this for, however long it's been out, I really cannot find any tangible crumb to really base that off of. Again, if this is a human trafficking operation, the fact that it's so close to a high traffic area is already a bit of a red flag. It's most likely that this is a homeless individual or several homeless individuals leaving behind a message and a probably seriously legitimate cry for help. Now, generally, if you are worried about this, I'm sure the LAPD and the FBI and the Homeland Security groups and plenty of nonprofit third-party organizations have received enough reports about this that there probably is a little bit of an investigation. I'm sure that they've probably sent out a squad card and maybe make sure what's going on here is completely kosher. And if there is something that is absolutely scary with the situation, I'm sure it'll be absolutely found out. But yeah, this is a creepy scenario that obviously people were a little bit, worried about, as was I when I saw it. It was creepy to come across. But generally, the most likely scenario here is one that is not the most sensational, but one that actually will have anybody watching this video question the homeless population of Los Angeles and the actual problems that they go through. I seriously do believe this is a cry for help. Probably not from a human trafficking victim, but somebody.
This situation raises many concerns, but after examining the details, the most likely explanation seems to be tied to the struggles of Los Angeles's homeless population. The unsettling messages, especially the word trafficos, naturally spark fears of human trafficking, but there's no concrete evidence supporting that theory here. Instead, it seems more plausible that this was a cry for help from someone facing homelessness or mental health challenges. The proximity to the Union Pacific Rail Yard and its police station adds some intrigue, but the inactive status of this location since 2019 weakens any substantial connection to ongoing activities. As for Cemex, while conspiracy theories have linked it to trafficking in the past, there's no factual basis to support those claims here. The theories feel more like overreach by internet sleuths eager to connect unrelated dots. What's striking about this case is how quickly sensational narratives emerge from ambiguous signs. The messages are undoubtedly creepy, but the reality may not be as sinister as some speculate. If anything, this highlights highlights a harsh truth. Cries for help like these might stem from individuals abandoned by the system, struggling with homelessness, addiction, or mental illness. This story is a reminder to focus on real-world issues instead of diving into baseless conspiracies. Whether or not law enforcement has looked into this, the situation reflects a deeper societal problem that shouldn't be ignored. While the mystery is unsettling, the message left behind seems to reveal desperation rather than organized crime.